Always fun having Bob Holt with us, sports writer extraordinaire from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and one of the good friends of our show here on Halftime. Bob, appreciate you coming on as always. So what do you think? You think in 2024 you might have to write a story? I know you don't write the headlines, but the headline will be Eric Musselman takes the job at San Diego head basketball coach. Chances of that happening, huh? Pretty much zero.
Yeah, I think, reading through the contract before the Zoom call, I just, chuckled. And of course, I knew that was Eric's alma mater and where he played. I do know he loves the city of San Diego, and if anybody's ever been there, I don't know how they would love San Diego, and that's such a wonderful area. And, the University of San Diego, being a coach there is a good job. I'm sure, San Diego State's a really top program. But yeah, they're obviously not in Arkansas's league, literally or figuratively. They're not in the SEC and they're not at this level. But talking to Eric, he stays in touch with his former teammates. I think he said there was 9 of them on a text thread, and maybe one of them texted, said in the thread, "Hey Eric, you ought to put in there a clause that you don't have a buyout if you come home to San Diego." And he probably meant it jokingly, but Hunter agreed to it. Yes, it's obviously kind of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I think I asked Eric about it. Is that a nod to your alma mater? He said that's a good way to put it. So I think he was just having some fun with that. But yeah, no offense to San Diego, I wouldn't expect Eric to go there. But who knows? Maybe Eddie Sutton's last coaching job was the University of San Francisco, which of course had glory days under Bill Russell, won back-to-back national titles in the late 50s. But interestingly, before Eddie Sutton took that interim job at USF, Eric Musselman was offered that job, but he didn't take it because he couldn't get any kind of assurance past that season. So it's funny how everything's interconnected somehow. It seems in a big circle.
Idea. That's interesting.
But yeah, I would not. I thought that was a fun thing, and I loved what Eric said about it, what Hunter said about it, and it was hopefully the readers enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I also love the idea that the currency that Muss is going to get from his friends that he played with is burritos, which I would go for that too. I think SmackDown and me would definitely go for that one. But it's obvious that there weren't any dealings with other universities, and this was a slow and steady build that Hunter Yurachek took. I mean, even he's talked about it yesterday on the Zoom. He's starting to talk to boosters in February, thinking, we're going to probably want to hold on to this coach for a long time. And one other thing that stood out from what he said, Bob, is that they waited until the next team was kind of built through the transfer portal. It's all a process. Didn't want to get the contract extension, at least not the announcement, mixed into, the rebuild of the Arkansas Razorback men's basketball team, moving into the next year. So it just felt like there was a slow, steady process that makes a lot of sense.
Well, yeah, Eric and Hunter both talk about this a lot, about how, close they are. Of course, Hunter played basketball at, I think it was Guilford College in Greensboro, North Carolina. And so, I'm not saying he was Michael Jordan or anything, but he has an understanding of the game. But I'm talking about Hunter during the NCAA tournament. I mean, he talks to Eric every day. Now, they don't talk for half an hour every day. Sometimes it might just be for a minute or two, but they're in constant contact. And so he talked to Eric Shays and Jordan Bazette. But actually, Eric told me that's who his wife's agent was. Really, maybe he's still her agent. She obviously was a TV broadcaster before she married Eric, and so he, that's how he got Jordan Bazan as his agent, and so he was in constant contact. So, but there obviously were discussions between, everybody about what Eric was probably looking for. I'm sure that was much more between the agent and Hunter than Eric and Hunter, but Eric knows what he wants, what his family wants, and but obviously during the tournament your focus is on winning games, although they were still recruiting during that period. And then they got 3 really good players out of the transfer portal. May not be done yet. If my math's right, they still have a scholarship open. But I'm guessing they won't let, you don't have to add a guy just to add a guy, but my guess is those might use that on somebody. And of course, people probably aren't going to have to redshirt anymore. But, so I think it was a steady progress. I don't know if Eric's agent or he talked to Arizona. It wouldn't surprise me because, if Arizona calls, you probably take that call just, to assess things. But, I don't think there was ever a big danger of Eric not coming back to Arkansas as long as he got a fair market deal for what he's done.
Yeah.
He's a top 10 paid coach now, and, Arkansas, went to the Elite Eight and finished in the top 10 in the AP poll, and, he's reloaded. Arkansas is going to probably be ranked in the top 10 in a lot of preseason polls. That doesn't mean they're going to have a top 10 season next year. You never know what can happen. But he seems to have the program, in a really good spot to where even when you lose good players every year, they're not going to be rebuilding. They're going to be reloading. And so, I think if Arkansas, if you got to go into Arkansas like Eddie Sutton did, like Nolan Richardson did, there aren't a whole lot of jobs you want to leave for unless you have some kind of personal connection. Like when Rory Williams left Kansas to go to North Carolina, that was his alma mater, and Dean Smith basically asked him to do that a second time to sort of save the program after they'd struggled under Matt Doherty. Otherwise, I doubt if Roy Williams ever would have left Kansas because that's obviously a top 10, top 5 job. But you look at Eddie Sutton and Nolan Richardson, they're in the Naismith Hall of Fame. And Eddie Sutton did say before he passed away many times, the biggest mistake he ever made was leaving Arkansas. Even though he went to Kentucky, if anybody knows that story, he was having drinking problems at the time. Nolan Richardson had a great run. It didn't end well. Thankfully, there's been a reconciliation, and the courts, he's honored with his name on the court. But even after all that, he still has always lived here, So I think it speaks to what a great area is, what a great job it is. And, if you got it going here, I don't think there are many places that you would leave for.
Well, and then the next thing it'll be interesting to watch here, of course, there is the one scholarship available. And I think we're going to be watching Muss, rebuild the team every year just because of the way college basketball is these days. But now there's an opening on the coaching staff. And if you go to the Razorback men's basketball page, Corey Williams is no longer on the coaches page. They're just down to David Patrick and Clay Mosier. So, I know that you guys wrote in the Democrat today about Williams probably going to accept a position at Texas Tech, and it looks like he at least has, or the Razorback expect him to. Muss has gone for, like you said, close associates like Clay Mosier, a former head coach in David Patrick. Williams was a former head coach too. I think it'll be really interesting to see, who he's looking at and who he gets to be the next assistant basketball coach for Muss.
Yeah, I think it's just like the players. Arkansas is a very attractive place to work right now. If you're an assistant coach, David Patrick, Cal Riverside, is not a program that's had a lot of success. Well, he won 17 games there his last year and really had it moving in a good direction. But Eric was able to offer more money, and obviously the cost of living in Northwest Arkansas is a little more reasonable than the cost of living in Southern California. And so he was able to attract David Patrick, who he'd worked with at LSU, to come to Arkansas. And also, I think when you look at the success Arkansas had this season, you look at the success you anticipate Arkansas having in the future, David Patrick's going to have a chance to get other head coaching jobs. He was in the mix for San Jose State and UTEP. Those have been filled. But, I'd anticipate David Patrick getting a head coaching job here in the next year or two. Could happen for Corey Williams, too. Now it would happen from Texas Tech, but instead of Arkansas. But, yes, I think there'll be Eric, my guess is Eric probably knows who he wants to hire. And once again, I think Hunter would give him if Eric says, hey, this is a guy we really need, here's what it's going to take to get him, my guess is Hunter would say, okay, whatever, fill in the blank salary. I'm not saying that they write a blank check for the guy, but if Eric says we need X amount to get him, my guess is Hunter will say, okay, we can pay that, And so I don't know how quickly they'll move on this, but I think they'll probably get somebody pretty good because, it's a top program again.
Bob Holt joining us here on Halftime. Bob, you were just mentioning the assistant coaches. I'm going to kind of expand on that. With Corey Williams heading to Texas Tech, which route do you think Musselman will look to go? Do you think he'll kind of hire within and maybe move up Michael Musselman, Anthony Ruda, someone along those lines, or do you think he'll hire from out within to bring someone into the fold?
I would think he'd probably go for somebody who's either a sitting head coach right now or an assistant at another Power 5 type program. No offense to those guys you mentioned. Eric brought up basically everybody on the staff outside of David and Clay, who already are assistant coaches. And I think he thinks highly of his staff, and but just like Eric drives himself hard, those guys, they're got their nose to the grindstone, or whatever that saying is. But I would think he would probably hire somebody from outside the program. Maybe somebody could be somebody with NBA background. It could be say somebody who's a head coach right now at a school. I mean, not a Power 5 type school. Maybe a mid-major that might feel like, hey, going to Arkansas, that's a better job right now than this head coaching job I have. The former UTEP coach, his name escapes me, but he left. That opening got created when that coach left to join Chris Beard's staff at Texas as an assistant. And then Joe Golding, who was a former UALR assistant and who was at Abilene Christian and who played Arkansas this year, and then obviously beat Texas in the NCAA tournament. He's a new UTEP coach, and that's been a really good job for people moving on. Doc Sadler was there and went to Nebraska. Obviously, Don Haskins had a huge run there, won a national championship as Nolan Richardson's where he played. A lot of coaches, Tim Floyd went from there to Iowa State and then on to the NBA. So UTEP's a really good mid-major job, and David Patrick was in the mix for that job. So, but yeah, I would think Eric's probably going to hire from outside. That's just my opinion. I don't have any inside scoop. I wish I did, but that's just my opinion.
Before we let you go, I want to ask you about the buyout, because a lot of people were curious about the buyout information. And Bob, it surprised me first, but then after hearing Musselman and Juracek discuss this, it made sense to me. But I want to hear your thoughts as well. The buyout for the end of next season is $7.5 million. Then it goes drastically down for the next season at $2 million. And at first I was like, well, that's an awfully steep discount that you could possibly get Coach Musselman. But I think they mentioned it on the press conference, the level of trust that Hunter Juracek and Coach Musselman have, that'll prove to probably be the difference in the difference in this buyout that they listed.
Yeah, and if he were to leave after next season, I think if he would like the day after the season would end, it would drop to $2 million, which is kind of interesting wording. But yeah, $2 million is significant. Obviously, more than $7 million. I think looking at those USA Today database, I think Kentucky's buyout for Calipari is something like 50-something million. But he just Kentucky fans, if he leaves, it'll be on his terms, not on Kentucky's terms. I think that's safe to say. But yeah, that was interesting. But Hunter spoke to that, and also if Eric stays through these 5 seasons, he gets $1.5 million a one-time retention bonus. So. That's pretty significant, I think, amount of money. Bottom line is, if a coach really wants to go somewhere else, then he's probably going to do that. Texas Tech did everything they possibly could for Chris Beard. I mean, they made some modifications to the arena, or were in the process of doing that. They had a practice facility. He was paid. I think he was a top 5 paid coach. And he delivered. I mean, he took him to the national title game. He took him to an Elite 8. He took them back to the NCAA tournament this year, and they lost Arkansas in a Sweet 16 game. So Texas Tech would have done, I think, whatever it took to keep Chris Beard. But at the end of the day, he wanted to go to Texas. That was his alma mater, and I guess he felt like that was a better job. And maybe he felt like, well, I took Tech to the title game. I can't top that. But I'm sure he could have ended his career at Tech, and he's in his early 50s, so he's probably can coach another 15 or 20 years or whatever. He decided he wanted to go to Texas. And I'm not sure what the buyout was, but Texas, they basically print money in Austin, even with the struggles they've had in football and basketball and whatever. But if a coach really wants to go to school A and he's at school B, he's probably going to go. And so, money aside. And so, I think you just, at some point you got to say, we want Eric to be our coach. He wants to be our coach. And, let's trust each other.
Bob, we'll leave it there. Appreciate you, man. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, you guys take care.
Yeah, Texas Tech could have tried to do everything they possibly could do. Unless they were able to change Lubbock, Texas into Austin, Texas, probably the only way that they could have kept Chris Beard at Texas Tech. Hey, my dad's a dentist, so I never had a fear of dentists, but I understand those who might. For those who do, Dr. Bo Sparkman and Dr. Brogan at Riley Farm Dental in Fort Smith are there to give you better lives and have very comfortable experiences. They're voted in the top 3 best of the best every year since 2017. It's about atmosphere. It's about how you treat people. And the second you walk in, you'll become part of the Riley Farm Dental family. You can learn more at RileyFarmDental.com or call 479-226-3500. They're at Highway 71, Riley Farms, 5901 Riley Park Drive, Suite A. Riley Farm Dental. First hour halftime wraps up next.